And then we will start this session of avoiding burnout and compassion fatigue with a little grounding exercise. So this exercise is by an institute called the Strozzi Institute for Embodied Practice. And so I attended a workshop where somebody did it, and I was like, that's pretty great. I want to steal that and use it as well. So we'll start with this exercise to kind of get us ready for what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're able to, wherever you are, you can even stand up or just sit tall and comfortably in your chair. And you might want to just kind of settle yourself in. So shake a little bit or shift yourself from side to side if you're standing up. And start to bring your attention to your body and how it's feeling. So notice what you're feeling physically. Notice even what comes up for you emotionally as you just slow yourself down and check in with yourself. You can notice things like temperature of the air around you, like pressure in your body, where do you feel tense or relaxed, and movement, the movement of your body, or even internally, you might feel your heart beating or your stomach gurgling. So just let your focus move away from thinking and being in your brain to just embracing your whole body. What is your whole body experiencing right now? And then take a second to notice your emotions. Right now, how are you feeling? Do you feel more sad or more happy, more content or frustrated, impatient, angry, grateful, worried, whatever that is? And it might not just be one thing, it might be a number of things. But just without judging those things, just notice, how are you feeling right now? And also you can notice your internal dialogue. Are there certain thoughts that are going through your mind? What are you thinking about? What are you telling yourself about those thoughts? So just notice if that's happening, and then try and bring your attention again to your body and your sensation. So we're going to start by doing a grounding in 4 different directions. And we'll start with our length. So from the center of your body, feel your length. Stand up straight and allow more space between each of your vertebrae. Feel all the way down through your legs. And in this centering practice, we can think of length as self-respect or dignity, our ability to find that in ourselves and see that in other people. So breathe in deeply and fill your lungs all the way down to your belly and your diaphragm. Breathe out. And move your attention again all the way down your body to your feet, and think about where you're standing, the earth and land that you're standing on. Think about what grounds you and roots you and who your ancestors are. And think about your connection to this earth on which you stand. And continue to breathe. And now let's just step all the way into our length by stretching all the way up. Taking up space and letting yourself be your right sides. Think about the things that have grown up in you, experiences you've had, skills that you've developed. What do you bring to this space and to your work? And also just think about the growing that you're still doing, right? There's none of us that know everything there is to know. There's always things that we are developing and learning. So think about what awaits you in the year ahead, side by side with the things you've already accomplished. And just breathe. And then the second direction that we're going to center ourselves in is our width. So again, starting in your center, fill yourself out from side to side. Feel your sensations from shoulder to shoulder, from hip to hip. Feel the outsides of your arms and your legs. And we can think of width as relationship and connection, the place that we reach out to others and then receive them reaching out toward us. Think about the rich community that surrounds you in your life and on our campus. Think about this other people on the call with you who work side by side with you to serve our students, and feel them with you. Even though we're not in the same space physically, feel that they're sharing your intention and your work. Continue to breathe deeply. And then the third direction we're going to ground into is our depth. So feel yourself from your back to your front. And try and locate just within your sensations, your lower back, the space between your shoulder blades and the back of your legs, and then move forward to find your breath and your heartbeat, all the feelings inside your body, and fill out into your front side. Feel the clothes on the front of your body. And we can think about this depth as the connection between our backs, our past, our histories, our ancestors, and our fronts, the future, the unknown, the things we hope for or intend, the vision that we have for ourselves. And depth is also where we find our longings, what makes meaning for us, our purpose, our guts, our hearts. And just notice how much depth you feel today. There might be times where we feel more thickness and just really can get a sense of our depth, and other times we feel kind of thin and a little emptier. Whatever that looks like for you today, center into your depth and continue to breathe. And then we'll do one more. We're going to center into our commitments. So I want you to put a hand or two on your belly and notice that this is your center. And turn your attention to the things that matter to you. What's your commitment or your commitments? Ask yourself, who or what do I love? What do I long for? Why do I do what I do? And let your commitment fill you out. Let it inform your whole nervous system. And today, in this time, we're going to practice embodying our commitments so that we can start to live them out. So first, we need to notice what they are. Perfect. Okay. Thank you all for doing that exercise with us. Just to do some grounding to get us started in the content and conversation we're going to have today. So welcome those who just came in. Again, my name is Shauna Olson Hong, and I'm joined today by Rosa Mora, who's one of the counselors in our center. We're from Student Health and Counseling. And this is part of our Wellness Ambassador Training Series. And we are so excited that so many of you were able to join us today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can start to look at slides together. And our hope is that in this session, we'll be able to both share a lot of information that Rosa and I and the rest of our counseling team has found to be really helpful, especially in this time that we are living through and all the care that's being required of us on behalf of our students. But we also want it to be a time where we are kind of connecting as a community and really having conversation. What do we need? What's working for us and what's not working for us. So although there are a lot of slides and different things that we have planned, we really want to make space for conversation and conversation in breakout rooms as much as we can. So that's our intention and hope for this time. So I'm going to get us started. We're going to go really quickly through the things we're wanting to prevent, just so we kind of know what they are and we're all on the same page. We're going to spend most of our time and energy today thinking about how do we prevent these things. So just quickly, we are thinking about experiences of burnout. And burnout is kind of a sense of physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion, combined with starting to feel like maybe I'm not competent to do my work. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing, or maybe I'm in the wrong field. We think also about compassion fatigue, and that's specific to the emotional strain of working with people that have been traumatized and the ways that we can start to pick that up from them and be impacted by their experiences. And then that moves into vicarious traumatization, when we really start to feel the impact of the trauma that other people have experienced, and we pick that up and we start to feel that ourselves. So that can also be the cumulative impact of doing this work over time. So I hope that those kind of those categories are clear in terms of what we are trying to avoid. And I think we're all really aware that over the past couple of years, especially, we've been working really hard, and we've been working hard on behalf of students who are going through a lot. And that has left an impact on all of us. And so that's why we wanted to gather in this space to think about how are we taking care of ourselves and sustaining ourselves as we're doing this hard work. The content, most of the content for this session comes from this amazing book called Trauma Stewardship. And it was actually written thinking about folks who do crisis work, folks who manage kind of mental health crises and medical crises and environmental disasters. But I find that we're kind of all doing crisis work these days. And so I think the things that the author talks about are now really relevant for all of us who are in serving and helping professions, which is all of us on this call. So I think that there's a lot in this book that can be really helpful to us. So I'll pause there, and I would love to give folks a chance to just introduce themselves, probably in the chat, and just say who you are, where you work, and what you're coming to, what inspired you to come to this session today. So if you just want to put that into the chat to say, this is me, and this is the department that I work in, and here's some things I was hoping for, or some things that drew me to this session, I think that would be really great, just so we can all see who is in this space with us. While we do that, I'm going to move us forward to watch a video together so that we can also get a little more sense of what this session is going to be about. So let me, that's ready, sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video while folks are putting into the chat their introductions of themselves and where they work on campus, and if there are particular things they wanted to hear from this session.
Here's to you, trying to make the world a better place. You take on the weight of it all, knowing there will be a cost, but never expecting to pay full retail for it. After a while, you notice something's getting to you. You're changing. You've been there. We've all been there. The answers just aren't all that easy anymore. Now you're too drained for even the smallest demands. You're numb. You feel like you can't do enough, and you've needed a nap since before the turn of the century. Maybe you're a school teacher, a public defender, or a member of the military. So why does the world feel like a different place to you? Maybe you're an ecologist, a doctor, a community organizer, or a caretaker to family members. It's all piling on, and some of your own choices could be starting to raise eyebrows. Let's face it, these days, when the world comes calling, you'd really rather not pick up. Your mind, blown. Your spirit, broken. And your body is not taking any of this all that well. Something's just not how you remember. And that something could, in fact, be you. Hey, it's a struggle. We understand that. Doesn't mean it's too late for a change. We're here. We get it. And we have ideas for how to find a better way. Check us out. TraumaStewardship.com. Here's to you, trying to make the world a better place.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for watching that with us. Hopefully that was a light way to get introduced to some of these topics that we'll be talking about. And I appreciate everybody who's putting their introductions into the chat. I'm going to pass it over to Rosa so she can give us a little more information on the terms that are on the screen that we might be experiencing or noticing.
Okay, so some of these are trauma exposure responses. The first one that comes up is feeling helpless and hopeless. So when the problem or issue feels large and unmanageable, like out of like your hands, when it's a little out of control, that's feeling that way. A sense that no one can ever do enough. It could create a culture of like just an ongoing urgency, like never having like enough time, like to complete tasks. The hypervigilance, it's everything is feeling exaggerated, difficult, and at times a little just dangerous because it's out of your own control. Um, the diminished creativity. The more we sink into trauma response, the less flexible or original our thinking becomes. That's when we become just more like just rigid. It's like, okay, getting the work done, that's all that matters without really, having that creative component that you once like, initially had, like when you took on like new projects. Okay, the inability to embrace complexity when you crave clear signs of good or bad, right or wrong. This is like that black and white thinking where you're not seeing anything else in the middle. It's just one or the other, which makes it really hard at times when, especially when at times you're working in a team and it's like, okay, it's my way or the highway, for a person makes it hard, when you're working in a team. All right, minimizing. Only the most extreme cases deserve attention. Chronic exhaustion, or physical ailments. And I know many of us, maybe especially during this time I know many of us are either like more on campus now, but even like during the pandemic, right? There was a lot of us where it's like, I don't know, I experienced like even back issues during that time, still do. But it's like we're more stagnant at times due to like our workplace for work and stuff. So even that, right? Just having the physical limitations could be one of like the trauma exposure responses. The inability to listen, deliberate avoidance. So for that one, it's avoiding difficult students, coworkers, or situations. The other one is dissociative moments. When you realize you didn't hear the last five sentences of what someone else has said, because you have so much going on, like on your own plate. Um, the sense of persecution. We feel that we are being mistreated, have little control over our own lives. Guilt. This distorted attempt to hide any of our own privileges, purposely attempting to diminish our radiance or our wellness in an attempt to level like the playing field. Fear. These are like intense feelings of personal vulnerability, of potential victimization. All right. Anger and cynicism. For that one, it's just our own natural reactions to hard, ongoing situations. But often we don't have healthy outlets or know how to balance these emotions when they come like in our direction. Okay. The other one is inability to empathize or numbing. Seeking distance or a break from overwhelming feelings. Our ways of doing this sometimes becomes unhealthy. Sometimes it could lead to substance use or unsustainability, overscheduling, or just feeling overworked at this point. Addictions, over reliance on substances or habits to escape. Grandiosity, an inflated sense of self related to our work. We feel we are the only ones who can solve these terrible problems. Sometimes we forget. We do have coworkers or other supports, but sometimes we just want to take it on because we committed ourselves and or we don't want to feel like, oh, I'm not capable of doing my own job. But there are supports, and I always feel like there's room for it to be reciprocated, like you're able to help others, and at times they're going to reach out to you too for that support. Can anyone like relate do some of these, like pull you're like, hey, that's been me sometimes. Do any of these like, has anyone felt these like recently?
A
And
lot
you
of
could feel free to type it in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry. Or yeah, unmute yourself.
Okay, I saw a lot of nodding. I know, especially Janine, when I think we're doing your introduction in the chat, you're like, I have noticed I've been feeling less patient. And I think that's a big one, I think, for a lot of us. Julie saying anger and cynicism for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, since we're recording and this can be out for everybody forever and ever, I will add, yeah, I mean, I think that part of it is, it's a lack of patience, but I definitely struggle with the grandiosity of like, I'm the only one who can solve this, and needing to step back and being like, I'm around really smart people and very capable people, and giving that space and remembering that like, I am gonna make mistakes and I need to really look to those around me because they're brilliant. So I need to work on that.
Yeah, and then KJ is saying in the chat, as someone new, I experience a lot of these as imposter syndrome, minimizing guilt, dissociative moments, and fear. Thank you, KJ.
Mhm.
Right. So I think in the interest of, again, not spending too much time on these negative things, and we want to save plenty of time and energy for other stuff, we did want to touch on some things, some additional layers of how trauma can impact us. Rosa, do you want to talk about that next section of adverse childhood experiences and those sorts of things?
Yeah. So for these can be individual experiences like of instability. So, and like some of examples, right, are either an experience of poverty, homelessness, the illness of a caretaker, a significant loss, or trauma, right? Experiencing or witnessing abuse. These can also be like, so just imagine, right? I always say we're like onions. We have tons of layers on us. We do. But these are like cumulative experiences like that stem from our, since we were born. Like, they even call that a traumatic response, right? Like when we come out of our, like when we come into this earth. So just our experience of living with these things, through these things, and also how, we came out of them, out of these situations, or the fear of these things as well, because with every layer come like emotions too. So we identify also with many identities, like with those layers, right? Ethnicity, gender, sexuality, legal status, disability, etc. This means that we both personally identify with trauma and oppression that these communities experience, that, like I said, with all these layers, right? And imagine, like the students as well, right? That we work with, our peers, our families. There's all these groups that we, that we work with and where we come home to, that we're around on an everyday basis. And just knowing how to hold these identities, these roles, and then we feel a higher level like of investment, responsibility, and impact, right? Like for everyone around us. And at times I feel, you know, in order like to help and support others, it's like we also need to remember to, guess what? We need to take care of us first in order to help support them. and in our setting, I think many of us, and I include myself too, that's why I was talking like to one of my peers earlier that I love to do these workshops because it's also a reminder for myself. It's like, okay, am I holding true to myself too, like, and working on this because it is a work in progress.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rosa. So hopefully that's helpful to know that we in the counseling center who talk with students about this all day, every day, we also need to be reminded, yes, this is for us as well. And I think it's such an important layer to think about our identities and how our identities impact how we experience trauma. And so just to speak for a moment about intersectionality, which I think is a concept that a lot of us have been thinking about, to think about all the different layers of our own identities. So for example, Rosa and I together, both share a lot of experiences as women walking through the world, but her experience as a Latina woman and my experience as an Asian American woman, there are some things that are different in that as well, right? And so our experiences are really formed by all the different layers of our identities, how we're seen in the world, and then how we experience the world through those specific lenses, right? So really thinking about, as Rosa was saying, how that impacts us and the experiences that we have, what kind of resources have been available to us throughout our lives, right? What kind of, how have people reacted to us and treated us? What kind of stories do I hear from our families and our ancestors about what we can expect in this country, right? That is really different for each of us in this room. And to think about how we understand that for ourselves, and then also how we understand that for the students that we're working with, knowing that we're never going to line up exactly and match all the same identities as the folks that we are interacting with. But I think we can use our own experiences and understanding of what we have gone through to kind of make some room and make some curiosity for what have other people experienced. So just thinking about all of the things that factor into the trauma that we experience and that we share and that impacts us even as we're walking with folks that have experienced trauma, we now want to shift our attention to think about the antidote for trauma responses, right? So starting to think about what do we do, knowing that this is the reality that we've been steeped in. So one of the things that really helps us to think to come out of trauma response, which takes us out of the present moment, we start worrying about the future, we start really focusing on the past. One of the things that we can do is cultivate some intentional practices of bringing us back to the present moment. And so an example of that is the grounding exercise that we did at the beginning of this call, right? To just say, let's focus on our breathing. Let's really be in our bodies and notice how our bodies are feeling. Let's do some movement and some intentional reflection that involves our whole selves to just be present with what is happening in me right now. So examples of centering acts are things like deep breathing and being really intentional and focused on how does my breath feel right now? It's something that we do often without thinking, but when we focus on it, it can kind of slow us down, calm us down, and help us pay a little more attention to what's happening in the present moment. Grounding exercises like we just did, things like mindfulness meditation practices, mindful movement practices, and spiritual disciplines like prayer, or kind of getting in touch with a higher power, getting in touch with creation in ways that help us to remember that right-sizedness that we were talking about, that we are important, but we're not everything. And so kind of an antidote to that grandiosity that we were talking about earlier. So I'll pause there for a moment. I don't know if anybody has questions about this or particular practices that have worked well for them that they want to share either out loud or into the chat. So in the interest of time, I'm going to continue to move us forward, but sometimes I don't know if somebody's typing into the chat and just hasn't pressed return yet. So if something pops in the chat, we'll come back to it. See, there we go, Denise. Hiking and getting outside. Those are perfect examples of doing something that gets us out of our heads, gets us moving, and gets us kind of in touch with creation. Those are great ideas. All right, I'm going to move us through this slide and to our next one, which is talking about traits of stress-resistant persons. And so folks that have done research in this area, thinking about why is it that some people are just more able to shake off stress or kind of bounce back from it versus other folks that are very impacted by it, they found these kind of through lines as coming into play for folks who are able to shake it off more easily. So they think about a sense of personal control, and some of this is just kind of your position in the world as well, like how much you have control over your world, and that matters in terms of the power and the position that we hold. But the more people can feel like they have power to influence their own life, the better the more able they feel to absorb some stress because they know I have some margin. This isn't going to throw me off completely. I can make some adjustments and still be okay. Another thing is the pursuit of personally meaningful tasks. So if you feel like my work is hard, but it's also impactful, so that makes it worthwhile to me. I'm going to continue to do this hard but impactful work. If we can make meaning of why we're doing what we're doing, it starts to feel a little better, a little more important. We also think about healthy lifestyle choices. So things as simple as getting enough sleep, staying hydrated during the day, eating meals regularly, getting good fuel in our bodies, being able to move our bodies regularly so we can shake off some of the stress hormones that build up. These are things that help us kind of maintain our health, our mental health, and our physical health. And then we think about social supports. So do we have people that we feel like accept us, will listen to us, will be there for us? Do we have folks that we can trust and talk to when things are difficult? Do we feel isolated and alone in our stressors? That makes them feel much heavier. So thinking about social supports as kind of a buffer for dealing with difficult situations. So I'll pause there again. I don't know if anybody has questions about these traits or ways that you can kind of imagine building them up in yourself or living them out in a way that could be helpful. Yeah, great question in the chat, Raphael. And you sent it just to me. Is it okay if I read it out loud and respond to it?
Absolutely, thank you.
Absolutely, no, great. I just wanted to make sure. So Raphael asked the question in the chat, is it true that stress-resistant persons also know how and when to say no? I think that's an amazing question. And I would say absolutely. I think that goes with having a sense of personal control. So being able to say, I can't do that, or you know, you have to back off me right now, you're putting too much pressure on me. Those sorts of things really contribute to our sense that we can affect our environment. We can kind of modulate the things that are coming at us. So I think setting boundaries is something that we talk about all the time in the counseling center. We talk about that with our students, and we talk about that as a counseling staff to make sure that we're able to maintain and do the things that are on our plates as well. Great question. Rosa, anything else you want to add about this one before we move forward?
No, not at this point. Thank you, Shauna.
Okay. So I'm going to move into the kind of meat of the trauma stewardship book, which is she has several different directions similar to the grounding exercise that we did that she talks about in terms of helping us to stay healthy and centered in the midst of doing difficult work. So she starts with the north and talks about north being space for inquiry. So first of all, thinking about reflection as an antidote to helplessness. So when we can take some space to think about what's happening right now and what do I want to do about it, then we feel, again, much more in control of what's happening because we have some room to reflect on it, to understand it, and to make some choices out of it. So thinking about questions like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this work? And is it working for me the way that I'm doing my work? So we can have little practices that we kind of braid into our lives, thinking about maybe before we start to work, reminding ourselves, this is why I'm doing it. This is my intention for the day as we sit down to our computers or our desks. Remembering that doing this work is our choice. It might not always feel like a choice, but it's something that we're choosing for. And if it's not working for us, there is the possibility about what other choices could I be making. I think it can also be really helpful to regularly talk with people about why we're doing this work. So those could be, you know, your colleagues just saying, hey, this is a moment where I remembered why I do this. Or sometimes I do this, and you remind me why we came into this field, right? So breaking that isolation that sometimes our work can cause, and being honest and receiving feedback from other people and really having a true conversation about it, being authentic when we are really questioning, I'm not sure that this is working for me, or I'm forgetting why I came into this field in the first place. It can also be helpful to write down your intention in doing this work and kind of return to that as a reminder. When this gets hard, I'm going to come back to that index card. I'm going to come back to that Google document to remind me, why did I come into this field? And when you have moments of remembering, like maybe a beautiful interaction with a student, add that to your list and say, yes, this is the kind of moment that reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing. We also want to just touch on the concept of trauma mastery. And that's the thought that a lot of the time we come into a field of work because we've experienced a hardship and we want to kind of address that hardship or make up for it, like by stopping other people or helping other people who are in a similar situation. And so there's this sense that if I could just, you know, support people's mental health, if I can work with folks that have survived trauma or sexual assault, then I will be making up for the hard things that I experienced. And that can be a great part of our motivation, but when that is our only motivation, it becomes a little tricky because it makes us feel like we're really stuck doing this work or else we won't be healed, or we can't make meaning of what's happened to us in the past. So we always want to make sure that if we are feeling like the only reason I'm doing this is to kind of get a handle or to be healed from my own experiences, that we open it up a little more and say, ideally, there should be other reasons I'm in this field, or ideally, there are other ways that I'm working to get that healing for myself. I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket and then feel like I'm stuck and I can't make a different choice if I really feel like I need. So any questions about the concepts on this slide before we move forward? I'm going to move us forward, and Rosa's going to take this one.
Okay, so the East, right? We're going to choose our focus. So we are in control of what we focus on. So one thing I want to, like put out there, a lot of the time I know that us as humans, tend to a lot go like, towards the negative, like mindset, right? It's like, all right, one way to sort of like just pay attention is like your own commentary, like, in your mind, like for your typical day, is your habit of thinking about work optimistic or pessimistic? I think that's a good way, to sort of just check in with yourself in regards to that. Um, Pay attention to like the like remind yourself of that you yourself have that free will. You're choosing this path, and you choose, like, you have a choice to choose another, right? If I weren't doing this work, what would I love to do? Be open about, looking at alternatives. Doesn't mean about the work, right? But like, even what is missing, like, what other part is missing? I put down that a hobby, or, I left something, I've always thought about that instrument, that's been sitting there, just something like to help with that balance, like, something that you was either left undone, or something that you've always thought like, I'm going to put that to the side, or I'm going to table it. It's like, why not revisit that? If it's going to lead to something, that you wanted like to invest some time in. Just, working towards those small changes in how you're doing, even like your work, or bigger changes in what you may want to pursue in the future. Um, and that's like more developing, like, yeah, like developing that plan B, like if you ever wanted to. It could be, a new horizon, or, even within the campus, right? Hey, that new position opened up, that's room for me for professional growth, right? Why not? You're already there. It's like, why not grow into that position where maybe you could be doing a little bit of what, if there's that passion is there, why, there's always room. I always say, if if the interest is there, apply, right? Apply. You're already there, and there's that possibility of room for growth within the university too. Especially if you're happy there. Mhm. Okay, and then the South. I think this one's important. And I like these workshops a lot too, because um and I hope like in the future they would be in person, because then it's nice to like connect, right? That way if I see any of you, it's like, hey, something like unites us in some way. And I always think like, um it's nice to just meet more people on campus. It's like just to build those bridges. All right, but I'm going to go through it. So practicing self-compassion is a big one. This one is how do we normally talk to ourselves honestly? Like, let's just say you're having one of those hard days at work, and it's like a lot on your plate, and pretty much you're like, you know what, Rosa, you're skipping lunch today. You don't deserve it right now. Just eat at your desk and get it done. Who hasn't done this, right? Like, at times it's like we're just going to work through it because we have this deadline that we're going to, do. So first thing is like practicing the self-compassion is like, okay, let's just say this was like a good friend of yours, and they just called you and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna have to skip lunch. I'm really busy. I'm feeling overwhelmed. How would you be? How would you talk to your friend? Would you be like that? Like, skip lunch? Yeah, you don't deserve it. You need to work through it, and toughen up, right? So if you really think about it, a lot of the times, I mean, I do this too. I feel like I'm a bully to myself, and it's like, no, so this is what I've been doing, and I don't know if it'll work, but like for some of you, sometimes I'm like, go to that mirror, go to that mirror. All right, that's your best friend, that's your sister, that's whoever is like, you're really close to, and you're more like their cheerleader, and really have that self-compassion, and really talk to them. It's like, okay, are you gonna say, okay, toughen up, suck it up, eat at your desk and just type while you're eating? Or are you gonna say, like, you know what, go on, eat and then come back? Because a lot of the times, honestly, are we not more efficient where we really do take, even if it's like that 10 minutes to eat, come back, and then you're able just to do everything more efficiently, and you get it done, you do get it done. But just, reminding yourself, and really just, being there for you. Show that love. Be that cheerleader, the same way you would talk to like your loved one, or like your best friend. Uh share that same voice, that same tone, with yourself. Give yourself that permission, because I feel a lot of the time we're quick to just be like hard on ourselves. I call that, sort of being like, yeah, that tough love. And then also practice compassion for others. Identify a person or a situation where an increase in compassion would significantly change the dynamic. When you commit to trying something small each week for a month and notice like the shifts with your peers, if you really are seeing someone that like is struggling, or they've called out a couple, due to like, I don't know, due to family matters or health, and just showing your support, really feeling what they're feeling, and just supporting them, it could go a long way, because I always say, whatever you like put out, you're also going to get back. It may not be, in the near future, but it could be like later on. I mean, we're not all like, we don't have the fountain of youth anywhere on campus that I know of, right? So there's going to be times where we're going to need that support one way or another, So I always feel like, it really takes it a long, like a long distance, really, just putting out that energy. So, and then reflect on your role models and community. I think that's a big one too. How have your ancestors sought healing for themselves and others? Do those around you nurture hopefulness, accountability, and integrity? And consider where you might need more role models and partners. Like, and that's what I'm talking about. It's more like just bridging. It's like, all right, getting to know one another too, like on campus, and just knowing like, hey, it was nice to know so and so in financial aid. I have a question. I can call them up. I could email them. But really just knowing like where the supports are in place, and talking with one another. It goes a long way. It really does. I feel that's how we're gonna be able to bridge and make our campus even like more just supportive, of one another. This is a big one, finding that balance, right? I like those pictures too. So reflect on your work environment and work routines. Are there things you can shift to create more balance and make your work right size? So a lot of the times too, it's even, I know many of us, and I'm guilty of it too, is like we get stuck even in our own buildings. When do we sometimes get a chance to be like, hey, connecting even with a coworker or someone else? Would you like to meet at Starbucks? Let's take a walk. Even our campus is beautiful. It is. Taking that moment to be like, you know what, I have 5 minutes. Let me just go take in, like the breath, do some breathing out there, go to the Zen garden. There's a lot of nice little like nooks that, you could either take, if you want the company, invite someone else. If you don't, it's okay. We have those days where it's like, I just want to be with me. And that's totally okay too. Uh, Create daily rhythms of taking breaks while in attending the, to us or to others. Look out the window, right? Like take in the scenery. I think it's so important, like to do that. Um, and look at your time off and plan when you would like to take it, rather than sometimes I know they're like, hey, you're accumulating too much vacation. You're going to have to take it before the end of the fiscal year. It's nice for you to be able to take control over that, right? And sort of just pick that. Um, all right, and keep energy like moving rather than absorbing and accumulating. And when we're on a fight or flight, energy is naturally discharged, like sort of like freezing. Um, and allowing like the energy to take root, like of it, like being able to like have it like released, and then not letting it like take root in the first place. Like find ways to actively release from this free like response, using like mindful movement, sort of like how we were shifting like our energy earlier today. And I think a big one is like practicing like just gratitude, right? A creative personal like practices of reflection, appreciating others, creating that structures like, as a team. And like I said, it really goes both ways. Just showing that gratitude, whether it be towards your peers, family members, like students. Even with them, it does. They really do remember. Believe me, they sometimes come to the counseling center and they're like, "Oh my God, I got so well taken care of from so and so." Even in different areas of the campus, like at the course center, at the Raw. and they're like, and they will remember your names. They really will, I've had some, even say like, oh my God, um, my coach sometimes is like really tough on me, but really shown me and like open up their hearts like in other situations, which is nice. It's nice for them. The students really do remember this and take it. And us as peers, right? A lot of it's nice to hear like, oh, my boss is so supportive, or my coworker is so awesome, they did this for me. So I always say, like, the more you like put out there, it will come back. It will.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rosa. We have one more area to center into, and that's the core and kind of putting this all into practice through daily practices. So really thinking about, I've heard all these great ideas. What am I going to do about them? And how can I kind of structure in so that I can do them regularly so that they actually start to accumulate or kind of balance out the accumulation of other things that are impacting me. So creating an intention at the beginning of each workday for how you want to live it, and creating an intention at the end of the workday for what you're closing and leaving behind. So I know some people have a practice as they arrive to work and a practice as they leave work or as they drive away from work or whatever your commute looks like, just to kind of open yourself up to what am I going to be able to do today to be of service or to live into whatever values I have. And then as you're leaving work to say, okay, now I'm leaving work and I'm remembering there's a whole world out there that I also like to engage in of family and friends and other, pursuits that I have. And let me shift out of work mode and be fully attentive to how I'm going to be present to those things, because those are good things that help us balance. All right, so I'm going to stop my share. And I think, we want to just spend the last few minutes thinking about what are best practices that you yourself have experienced or intentions that you want to have. Having thought about all these things, what do you want to put into practice? And whenever we think about goals and intentions in the Counseling Center, we always say, let's make it really realistic, something that we can actually commit to and kind of concrete enough that we can say, oh, am I remembering to do that? Was that my plan or not? So thinking about something that's not too big, not like I'm going to start training for a marathon, but like maybe I'll take a walk during lunchtime. And thinking about when am I going to do that and who am I going to do it with and how often, making it really concrete and manageable in that way. So I'll open it up to the group and you can either unmute or put into the chat. Is there something that you feel inspired to start trying as a result of the reflection that we've had together today? What do folks think?
I can start. Let's see. I liked the slides about self-compassion, and we were talking about kind of being. I personally cheer on my friends, and so I haven't thought of it as I should talk to myself or think of myself the way I would think to my friends. And sometimes I do that, like I'll be like, good job, Anthony. But I think I can go up. I can I can do more than just good job. I can do some more self-talk. And then the last on the previous slide talking about intentions, I notice I do that with my weekends. It's like, okay, this weekend I want to get these things done, and I want to do these things on the weekend. But maybe I can spread that into my weekdays or my work days and stuff like that.
That's great, Anthony. I love those ideas. That's fantastic. Thank you. And I really like, and I saw a lot of us kind of smile as we listened to that, thinking of cheering ourselves on in the way that we cheer for our loved ones. And of course, we deserve that just as much as other folks. So to give that to ourselves, because we are always around. So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you.
Other things that come up for folks, intentions that you want to share with this group. And sometimes the good thing about sharing it is like, oh, and now some folks have heard me say that. And so that makes me even more inclined to act on it or remember it. Or maybe if I see one of these folks around campus, I'm going to say, hey, Anthony, have you been cheering for yourself? To remind him that that was his intention. So Janine put into the chat, take a step back before reacting. That email or response can happen once there's space to pause and reflect. So wise, Janine, so wise. And we sometimes don't give ourselves that space. And so just saying, this is important. This is one of the ways I'm going to be my best self. I'm going to give that as a gift to myself and also to whoever is going to receive this more thoughtful email. Is great. I love that. And then KJ is saying, now that the storms are going away, I want to take time to step outside for a short walk around the SA or SF buildings at least once a work day. It's so easy to stay inside and work all day. Absolutely. Yes, we're all. Thank you, KJ, for that. I think you're inspiring us to all think about, like, I'm thinking, oh, I have not been outside since I walked in this building this morning. So that's a really good reminder.
Julie have put on there.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just reading like what Julie had said that she liked the making the intention, right? Like of transitioning from non-work, like at the end of the day, or starting setting the transition at the end of the day too. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Rosa.
I encourage everyone to drink water all the time. Get your bottle. I have a Path Water bottle. My son works for Path Water. This is a refillable water, and this is one of their Nickelodeon's one edition. But I encourage, not because of that, I just encourage someone, you're in a time of panic, drink water. That makes you pause and think. Bravo, Julie. Yes, it's healthy. A lot of people forget to drink water. A lot of us are talking, and then you feel like fatigue. By drinking water, you kind of replenish and refresh yourself, and it really does help. It makes a difference. I'm a runner, therefore, yes to good weather. Please come back to us so I can go run. And I run marathons and ultra marathons, but the drinking water suggestion, it does work. So share the wealth of water.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carmen. Yes, and Rafael's saying instead of coffee, it's a good idea to say what's going to really be good, the best thing for my body. And then Alvin had also put in the chat, and I'll read it, getting back outdoors, doing things for myself and my well-being and not feeling bad about it. Yes, so give ourselves permission to do that and know that that's the best thing we can do for ourselves. It is more important than answering that one last email before we get outdoors. Getting back into competitive sports and journaling. I have an iPad I just started using for journaling or just writing down notes, and I plan to do so. It's definitely helping so far. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. And then yes, Julie has to go outside for her meeting. That is great, Julie. Have a great time. Any other last thoughts before we end this time together?
Yes, continue to do these training sessions, please, please. They help so much. Getting together, talking about it, sharing ideas. They work for me. I don't know about anyone else, but they work every single time. Thank you, Shauna, and thank you, Rosa.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that, Carmen. And so speaking of which, I just put in the chat, we do have a follow-up session for this particular conversation that will be just an open time for folks to continue sharing what's working for them, what's not working, sharing ideas. So if you're interested and you can come on Wednesday, the 26th of April from 12 to 1, the registration is in the chat. So please come continue this conversation and continue with folks who have been in this workshop with you to talk about these ideas, to hold each other accountable, to share ideas. It really inspires us to keep going because these things are kind of countercultural. I think in a work life, we can just work. And so to remember that there's more that we want to be doing to sustain ourselves kind of goes against that. So we need to be intentional about reminding ourselves, reminding each other that these are important priorities. Fantastic. And Rosa, any last thoughts before we close?
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask, like, hopefully we can commit to, like, just one thing from like what we went over today, and then hopefully like at the when you do have the follow-up, you guys can all talk about that a little further, like how was it for you, or and how it shifted, like maybe like your day, like when you were able to get that walk in, or do something for yours, or be that cheerleader, right, Anthony? We'll check in with that too.
Fantastic. All right. And one last thing I'll say is that we are actually doing this workshop again next week on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. So for those who are on campus, or if you know people that you're like, oh, this person would really, it would help them to hear this, it's going to be in person in student health and counseling in our conference room. And we'll also have a Zoom option for folks that aren't on campus. So let me know if you need that information, or it should be coming out from it's part of the SWEET program that the campus is doing to support staff and faculty kind of wellness. So we're happy to offer this again and continue the conversation. All right, thank you so much, everyone who came today and stuck with us. It was great to hear your ideas and just be with you in this way. I hope it makes you feel inspired, and we would love to see you on April 26th if you want to continue this conversation, or reach out to us. We're here on campus. If you see Rosa and I walking around, we would love to connect with you in person as well. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.